Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. D&D is a special game. You see, it's always embraced a certain element of duality. Chaotic and lawful, evil and good, adopting draconian royalty policies only to say, oh god, we're losing everyone, and throwing the whole game into the Creative Commons. You get the gist. One of these dualities that DMs find themselves to be intimately familiar with is the balance between careful and meticulous planning or just making shit up as you go. Ironically, since I started a D&D YouTube channel, I've actually been playing a lot less D&D than I used to. But even my rusty ass knows that you can't do one while neglecting the other. If you spend all your time planning a session where the party needs to go and fight the vampire, and only a session where the party needs to go fight a vampire, your players are gonna say, lol, that's cute, and f*** off to go explode some ducks using vinegar and baking soda or one of the many other sociopathic things that D&D inevitably leads players to do. But if all you do is improvise, you end up with something like today's horror story. The story I have for you today stars a DM who just can't be bothered to plan out a session, and instead uses his terrible improv skills to bother both his players and me. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Enjoy. This week's story comes from Reddit user Ryan X Wanbin and is titled The DM That Refused to Prep Sessions and Would Just Make Things Up to Eat Session Time. There's a key recommendation to upcoming DMs that I think a lot of people misinterpret. The suggestion to learn to improvise is a great one because, as all DMs will know, your party will eventually surprise you and venture into a direction that you did not expect. This is advice that any DM should follow, or they're forced to return to the railroad when the party takes the alternate route. But some people think that you should only improvise and make bare-bones preparation. And maybe there are some really good DMs out there that have the ability to do that, but for most people, prep is absolutely key to making a good game. And here is why. I joined a homebrewed game about an empire that was currently going through political turmoil and losing foreign wars, greatly weakening it. It sounded very similar to my own game, so I decided to join. I decided to play an Inquisitor-type character trying to re-strengthen the Empire by any means necessary. If the other players happened to want to rebel, then my character could be flexible enough to think a new revolution was necessary. We start the session off with the other two party members, Ranger and Bard, hanging around a tavern as I come in to investigate a town. Bartender tells us bandits have been raiding the town and the local magistrate is looking for volunteers. Cool, the other party members hear this and, low on coin, decide to join up with me. After about an hour of talking and introductions, we decide to head our way to the magistrate, when suddenly a nearby man grabs my character's hand and tells me to play card games with him. My character refuses, he's here on business. The man is insistent. We refuse thrice, and he still won't relent, causing my character to glare at him and ask if he's interfering with Inquisitor business. The DM asks me for an intimidation roll, and after a success, he finally leaves us alone. We attempt to leave the bar, only to be stopped by the waitress. The waitress starts talking about how cool and powerful the party looks, and then starts blogging on about her own life out of nowhere. We talk and try to leave, only for her to now offer services for gold. We refuse, and she is insistent, and we again have to refuse several times before she finally backs off. But before we can, the ranger has to make a constitution save for the one ale he drank 30 minutes ago. And when he fails, he goes unconscious as we have to spend the next 10 minutes trying to wake him up. Finally, outside the tavern, we come across a beggar asking for money. We refuse considering how everyone is low on gold and try to move on, only for the beggar to start clinging on to the ranger's leg. Ranger has to roll athletics, and when he fails, he tumbles to the ground while the beggar begs for money, and I have to draw my sword to get him to back off. As we make our way to the magistrate, a random man on a horse suddenly attacks us. Ranger shoots him and knocks him off his horse. Bard heals him up and we demand answers for why he attacked us. The man is very nonchalant in his attitude, refusing to answer even under threat of sword. After asking him multiple times and threatening him, he finally answers that he's part of some noble house, and thought that we were from a rival house. My character is incensed, asking why he would think total random strangers he saw were from a rival house, and the man just shrugs, going on and on about how he hates the rival house. I almost execute the man right there, only for us to be attacked again by another horseman. The DM telling us that this time it's a man from the rival house. The bard casts dissonant whispers on the horse, and we tell the DM flatly that we just run away so we don't gotta deal with this. We finally make it to the magistrate, only for the guard in front to ask who each of us are, and we need to give our background stories that we had already said back at the tavern. As the clock finally hits the 4th hour of session time, the DM starts clapping his hands and goes, "Perfect. The session went exactly 3 hours as I wanted. See you folks next week." And if it wasn't obvious by now, the DM was throwing every single thing he can think of to prevent us from actually meeting the magistrate. He was throwing every single thing he can think of to eat up session time as much as possible. Pretty annoying, but maybe he didn't have enough time? No, absolutely not. I'm probably the last person to be giving advice on this, since I have a bad habit of running 8-hour one-shots. But for the love of Christ, dude, the DM is not there to act as a babysitter to keep his players busy until their parents get off work at a specific time to come pick them up from soccer practice in their upper-middle-class minivan. The DM is there to play a role in entertaining a group of 3 to 8 adult players who want to play a role in telling a good story. Nobody likes filler. And if your entire session is just filler, it shouldn't shock you to find out that nobody is gonna like the game you're running. Here's a good rule of thumb for aspiring DMs. Give a little bit of time for the party to get acquainted and then immediately give them something to do. A goal to accomplish. The exact moment that a new group of adventurers shows up in town just so happens to be the day that the local bandit leader has an argument with his wife and decides to vent by attacking the village. It's really not hard. The appeal of the stereotypical beach episode, if there ever was any, is that it's a fun little break from the main plot and stakes of the overarching narrative. But if every single episode is a beach episode, you're not writing a thrilling story about the dangers of marine living, you're writing something that's a piece of garbage. The next week is exactly the same. The magistrate greets us and tells us that we have to see a lieutenant on the other side of town for details on the bandits. We just spent 3 hours getting to this guy, and he tells us that we have to see someone else. The bard asks why in the world he wouldn't have information on the bandits, and the magistrate just shrugs and says that it's not his position to know military affairs. So off we went to meet this lieutenant, only for a freaking storm to suddenly appear. The storm is so strong, the rains are so heavy, the winds are so powerful, that midway through the town we are forced to rest in a nearby house. In the house is a granny, and we offer her 1 gold piece from each of us after explaining our situation. The granny offers us food, and we tell her no thanks since we're already in her home and we have rations. When we try to sleep, the granny then requests that each of us start fixing things in her house. Leaky roof, broken cupboard, a rat hiding in the corner, dirty cooking ban, all of which require rolls and more time. An hour is spent in Granny's house before we can finally rest and move on. We meet the lieutenant who, again, asks us for our backstories and why we want to help clear the bandits. He finally tells us that there are about 8 of them in a nearby forest. We go to the forest only to be stopped by fallen trees blocking our path. All 3 of us have to roll athletics checks about 5 times to clear the trees, and the DM goes into painstaking descriptions of how our characters' backs hurt, and we feel tired and hands are itchy if we roll anything below a 10. DM tells us that it's been half a day and we need to make camp and long rest again. We decide to forage for food, and then the DM starts listing every single animal and vegetable he can think of. Bard tells him that we just want to find vegetables that aren't poisonous, and then he starts listing off the same things again for some reason. Ranger says that he's gonna hunt for some animals, and again the DM starts listing off every possible animal he can think of in the woods. Ranger has to tell him that he will literally hunt anything, and after a survival check runs across a rabbit. Ranger rolls to shoot with an 18 and misses. The DM tells him that the bushes, shrubs, and forest somehow made the Ranger miss with an 18. 18, mind you, is plate armor status. Ranger has to continue chasing the rabbit, and the DM just drags this session for another 10 minutes, stating how several of the Ranger's shots still missed until he finally lands a 23, which was apparently the magic number he needed to kill a rabbit. In total, trying to forage for food and cook takes us an entire hour of session time. We finally get to do the rest, and we resume our journey, and the DM says that we find the bandit encampment. He starts clapping his hands and goes, "Wow guys, another perfect 4-hour session ending right on time. This is really going well if I do say so myself. Okay, next week I'll get these bandit stats and find a map somewhere online for the battle." Yeah, I was done and quit the game. I perfectly understand that TTRPG isn't just finding a quest and doing a combat session, but when it takes 8 hours of forced interactions to finally just arrive at the bandits we were supposed to fight, when things are being dragged out not for the sake of enriching the world but to eat up time, and random weather and falling trees impede the path just for the planned session time, the game kinda loses authenticity. Please, people, a good game has both great preparation and improvisation. End of story. Oh boy, I don't know about you guys, but when I play D&D, I do it so I can relive the same experience as playing Oregon Trail and visiting my grandmother as an adult. By the way, call your grandma, she loves you and she misses you. Everyone's heard of the phrase, no D&D is better than bad D&D. But something that really isn't talked about is that even bad D&D is gonna be better than boring D&D. If you're gonna crash and burn, you might as well go out like a phoenix instead of a sad fart that you ignited using your stoner buddy's lighter. We're all gonna die one day. Literally every second that passes is one that you are never gonna get back. Do you really want to spend that precious time playing with a DM whose explicit goal is to waste exactly 4 hours of your time and make you feel a bitter sense of regret and loathing afterwards? If I wanted to do that, I would just tune into the H3H3 podcast. I'll say it again, even bad D&D is better than boring D&D. Although I may be biased because I make my money off of bad D&D. Now before we go, let's take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes from viewer Cheetah Fox and depicts the ever-powerful Drake accepting an offer from his loyal employee, Larry the Kobold. Despite appearances, I am not always the worst boss imaginable. Drake, I need your help! Not now, Larry, I'm doing dragon things. Drake, please, my ex-wife found out that I hid some income during the divorce and now she's suing me for damages. I need you to take this and hide it so she thinks I'm living in poverty. Yeah, okay, Larry, Wait, is that bag of money breathing? Okay, I may have also told her that the dog ran away. Larry, that's so unbelievably based! Thank you again, Cheetah Fox, for submitting your art. If you'd like to see your fan art featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section, along with anything you'd like me to promote in my description. Fan art is my favorite part of doing YouTube, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting my channel further, my Patreon and merchandise links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.